Shocking information was released this week showing abuse of power by DC Judge James Boasberg. He gave an order to Verizon allowing the FBI to spy on sitting U.S. senators. This week, Congress officially filed Articles of Impeachment stating he is guilty of high crimes and misdemeanors and should be removed from office. For you to understand this story, we need to go back to the beginning. More and more information has started to come out about what happened in the previous election in 2020. A lot of people still think that the Democrats stole the 2020 election, primarily because of this chart. Somehow, Joe Biden received an unusual amount of votes that disappeared the following election cycle. It looks to me like cheating. This is what Donald Trump said at the time on Twitter. I won the election in a landslide, but remember, I only think in terms of legal votes, not all the fake voters and fraud that miraculously floated in from everywhere. What a disgrace. And then there was this tweet. The Democrats dumped hundreds of thousands of ballots in the swing states late in the evening. It was a rigged election. The election was officially called for Joe Biden. Donald Trump was removed from Facebook on January 7, 2021, and removed from Twitter on January 8, 2021. He was still the president at this point. Think about that. A sitting president was removed from social media because he looked at this chart and said, "That looks like cheating." Then 1 year into Joe Biden's presidency, the FBI launched an investigation called Arctic Frost. This investigation targeted Trump for election interference. It started with this email inside the FBI requesting to open a case on the Trump campaign et al. For conspiring to defraud the U.S. government via the elector scheme. Let us just stop here. This email should never have been sent. This looks like the current administration is opening investigations into their political opponents. The FBI should not open investigations into former presidents. The timing of this email is important. It was sent on February 22, 2022. Donald Trump had been testing the beta version of his new online platform called Truth Social. A week before the FBI email, Donald Trump Jr. posted on Twitter on February 15, 2022, breaking, this was Donald Trump's first post on Truth Social. Get ready, your favorite president will see you soon. Then the day before the FBI email on February 21, 2022, Truth Social officially launched. So the Democrats had managed to get themselves into power, they had managed to ban Donald Trump on all social media platforms, but now Donald Trump had created his own platform and the Democrats would not be able to silence him anymore. The Democrats were getting nervous. The very next day after Truth Social is launched is the day the FBI sent the email requesting to open Arctic Frost. Approval to start the operation came from the highest levels. Here's the memo signed by the head of the FBI, Christopher Wray, and the U.S. Attorney General, Merrick Garland. The statistics look like it is the Democrats who are cheating in the election. And when Trump tries to say that it is not fair, they open an investigation to accuse Trump of election interference. Does anyone else see the hypocrisy? Special counsel Jack Smith started requesting subpoenas. He sent 197 subpoenas targeting more than 400 Republicans. Let me remind you that in the U.S. we are protected by the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution, which says, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. That is very clear. The government cannot just come into your home and randomly start looking around. Fishing expeditions are not allowed. If the government wants a subpoena, they must have a specific reason and a court order. A lot of people do not know the reason why this is in the Constitution. In 1763, there was a journalist and a member of Parliament in London named John Wilkes. Now, this is not John Wilkes Booth who assassinated Abraham Lincoln. This took place 100 years before that. John Wilkes published a weekly political newspaper called North Britain. Basically, he called out people in power and made fun of them. This was their version of sharing memes. The King of England, King George III, gave a speech in Parliament about the Treaty of Paris that he had just signed. In North Britain, issue number 45, John Wilkes viciously attacked the King's speech, saying, "This week has given the public the most abandoned influence of ministerial effrontery ever attempted to be imposed on mankind. Every friend of this country must lament that a prince of so many great and amiable qualities, whom England truly reveres, can be brought to give the sanction of his sacred name to the most odious measures, and to the most unjustifiable public declarations from a throne ever renowned for truth, honor, and unsullied virtue." It sounds like he really did not like the King's speech. The King was furious. How dare this journalist make fun of the King? The King arrested anyone involved in the writing, printing, or distribution of issue number 45. This led to over 40 arrests, and John Wilkes was imprisoned in the Tower of London. The King was holding a member of Parliament in prison for making fun of his speech. This led to public outcry. There were rallies with mobs chanting, "Wilkes and liberty." 45 became the sign of resistance. People engraved it on mugs and graffitied it on the walls. The court case dragged on for years, but eventually John Wilkes was released on a technicality. George III was the same king during the Revolutionary War in America, and he was using the same tactics against the colonists. 13 years after North Britain number 45, the Founding Fathers signed the Declaration of Independence in 1776. John Wilkes was at the forefront of their minds, which was why they included the Fourth Amendment in the Constitution. The U.S. was supposed to be different. In the U.S., the people have the power. This is where Judge James Boasberg enters the story. A whistleblower has come forward with a secret order issued by Judge James Boasberg as part of Arctic Frost. This explains that the FBI had requested a subpoena to Verizon for cell phone records. This document places a gag order on Verizon so they cannot inform any of the targets that their cell phone information is being turned over to the FBI. Senator Ted Cruz was one of the people who was spied on.
When you have the Biden Department of Justice subpoenaing 20% of the Republicans in the Senate, it is an egregious abuse of process. It is a fishing expedition. And we need to have a full and thorough investigation and accountability for every executive branch official that signed off on weaponizing the government. And I believe that the House of Representatives should impeach Judge Boasberg. Judge Boasberg was the one who made findings that he had no basis for. And when he did that, he took off his judicial robe. He just became a partisan crusader. He joined with Jack Smith in the mission to try to stop Donald Trump from being reelected. Thankfully, the voters prevailed. Democracy prevailed. But I'll tell you what, if, God forbid, Kamala Harris had become president, we would never, ever, ever find out about this. They would have buried their abuse of power. And what's critical, this can never happen again.
So who is this Judge Boasberg? He's a judge in DC who was appointed by Barack Obama. As a judge, he's not allowed to make political contributions, but his wife has given over $10,000 to Democrat candidates. His sister, Melissa Boasberg, worked on John Kerry's presidential campaign. This is a very politically motivated family. Here are some of the recent cases Judge Boasberg has overseen. Number 1. Tren Aragua gang members were deported out of the country. Judge Boasberg ordered the plane to be turned around and flown back into U.S. airspace. Judge Boasberg found the Trump administration in contempt of court, which was overturned by the DC Circuit Court of Appeals. Number 2. DoD signal chats containing attack plans were leaked by the press. The Trump administration is being sued by a watchdog group claiming that this was inappropriate use of technology. Number 3. FBI lawyer Kevin Kleinsmith is the one person who pleaded guilty to the crimes for falsifying documents to spy on Trump in the Russian collusion hoax. Judge Boasberg let Kleinsmith off with probation. There was no jail time. Number 4. There was a court case against Facebook for abusing its market power and social networking to crush social competitors. The Trump administration brought this case in 2020 before he left office. Boasberg dismissed the complaint, claiming the allegations ultimately fall short of plausibly establishing that Facebook holds market power. Number 5. Judge Boasberg oversaw the trial of Ray Epps for his part in the protests at the Capitol. For some suspicious reason, Ray Epps was let off with only probation. Number 6. A woman was arrested for traveling from New York to Washington, D.C. with the intent to kill President Trump. She said, "I literally told FBI in 5 states today that I am willing to sacrificially kill this President of the United States by disemboweling him and cutting out his trachea with Liz Cheney and all the affirmation present." Judge Boasberg quietly released her from prison pending her trial. He simply ordered that she go back home to New York, wear an ankle monitor, and go see her psychiatrist. This is crazy. Is he trying to get Trump killed? I'm starting to see a pattern here. This one judge seems to be getting every case related to Donald Trump and then ruling in favor of the Democrats. Just to be clear, this is statistically impossible. Cases are supposed to be assigned to judges randomly. How does this one judge get all the cases related to Donald Trump? Not only that, the case about the Tren de Aragua gang members, he assigned to himself while on vacation.
One other thing to note here, these cases are also supposed to be randomly assigned. Judge Boasberg, over the weekend it came out, he's not the emergency judge in D.C. He inserted himself in that role. He was on vacation. The case was filed at 2:30 in the morning. Somehow he ended up with that case. He wasn't the emergency judge on duty. So I think this requires further investigation and legislation.
So let me get that straight, because I'll quote you on that, because that is news to me and maybe a lot of other people too. If he wasn't the emergency judge who would naturally matriculate into that position on this, he just gets to pick himself and say, well, I'm the favorite. Let me go do this case against Trump.
He's the chief judge, and he inserted himself. That doesn't happen. The emergency judges 100% of the time get those cases. So he could have been tipped off that this was going to be filed, and while on vacation, he took the case. So again, this speaks to, I think, the very aggressive, unusual, and unprecedented measures that these activist judges are taking to insert themselves. Ultimately, they're not going to be right. The Supreme Court's going to slap them down. But the Judicial Conference, Chief Justice Roberts ought to look at this, and we also, the Article I branch, I intend to file legislation to make sure this randomness, which is supposed to happen when these cases are assigned, actually happens. We need more transparency, because right now, people don't think it's random at all.
So we have this Democrat judge issuing secret orders as part of the Arctic Frost investigation to spy on Republicans. A subpoena from Verizon means that the FBI can get call logs, text message metadata, and location information. What makes this even worse is that this was not just ordinary citizens. This was sitting U.S. senators. This was one branch of government attacking another.
We should immediately call Judge Boasberg in front of us. He's the one who signed these subpoenas against me and the other 9 Republicans that were subpoenaed. Our phone records were subpoenaed. And you know, Mike, we don't know what else they got. Did they get banking records? Did they do opposition-style research on us? And exactly what were they doing? We also need to call the CEOs of these wireless companies in front of us. Verizon rolled over and complied. AT&T fought back. AT&T did not release records. But you know, the fact that Judge Boasberg would have put a non-disclosure order on top of the subpoena and said, well, I fear that these senators may destroy evidence or tamper with evidence, or they may intimidate witnesses. You know, to insinuate such is, of course, something that is a violation. And it is our First and Fourth Amendment rights, and the separation of powers, and the speech and debate clause, and of course the Stored Communications Act that have been violated. And of course we know there were organizations that they went after the banking records of those organizations. So this is deep and wide. It is far deeper and wider than Watergate. It is far more intrusive and invasive. 197 subpoenas are what we know so far, and 430 individuals that they were going after, individuals and organizations. So we do need to get going on this. We need to do it sooner rather than later.
There have been so many laws that have been violated. Now, on this channel, I like to be fair and balanced. So let us hear what Attorney General Merrick Garland has to say about this investigation.
Federal prosecutors and agents may never make a decision regarding an investigation or prosecution for the purpose of affecting any election or the purpose of giving an advantage or disadvantage to any candidate or political party. In short, we must treat like cases alike. There is not one rule for friends and another for foes, one rule for the powerful and another for the powerless, one rule for the rich and another for the poor, one rule for Democrats and another for Republicans, or different rules depending on one's race or ethnicity. To the contrary, we have only one rule. We follow the facts and apply the law in a way that respects the Constitution and protects civil liberties.
What about Special Counsel Jack Smith? What does he have to say?
The people on my special counsel team were like that. The idea that politics played a role in who worked on that case or who got chosen is ludicrous. And Andrew, you know, and this is another thing that I think if you're not inside the U.S. Department of Justice, the idea that politics would play a role in big cases like this, it's absolutely ludicrous, and it's totally contrary to my experience as a prosecutor.
Both of them say it was not political. They claim there was nothing improper that was done. How is a secret order to spy on Republican senators not political? If it was not political, why was it a secret? I think they are all a bunch of liars. This week, the scandal has gone international when a whistleblower came forward from the BBC. This is outrageous. It turns out that the speech that Donald Trump gave in 2020 before the protests at the Capitol was edited by the BBC to make it seem worse than it was.
Because tonight the BBC is facing serious questions over its credibility after the Daily Telegraph exposed a panorama segment that heavily doctored a speech by the American president in 2021, hours before the infamous January the 6th Capitol riot. As you're about to hear, the corporation spliced together two quotes 1 hour apart to make it seem like he encouraged an insurrection.
They played the following clip.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you, and we fight. We fight like hell.
But Trump didn't, in fact, say this at all. The BBC spliced together two clips that took place 54 minutes apart. So let's go through it again.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and I'll be there with you.
Now, see there, between Capitol and, that's a cut. Here's what Trump actually said.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women.
It's different. It wasn't until nearly an hour later that he then said the second part of the BBC's version.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we fight. We fight like hell.
That is damning stuff.
How do these people call this journalism? What is going on? It's like there was an entire global conspiracy to take down Donald Trump. I think a lot of people owe Donald Trump an apology. I realize that a lot has happened, and this is confusing, and sometimes it's hard to tell what is going on. This Tuesday is Veterans Day in America. I want to remind you that our veterans taught us something very important. In 1945, there was a little-known battle at the end of World War II called the Battle of Itter Castle. This is a castle in Austria near the border with Germany. This battle happened just 5 days after Hitler committed suicide, but 2 days before the Germans surrendered. Itter Castle acted as a prison for high-profile French prisoners of war, including the former French Prime Minister. The French prisoners had managed to take control of the castle, but were still trapped in enemy territory. Nearby, a unit of German soldiers stopped following orders and instead started protecting the local Austrian towns from roving Nazi troops. They hoped to be able to surrender to American forces. These German soldiers actually joined forces with American troops who had entered the region, and they went together to try to rescue the French Prime Minister. They made it to the castle, but were immediately surrounded and attacked by Nazi troops. They were massively outnumbered. The French, the Americans, and the Germans fought side by side to keep the Nazis out of the castle. The Nazis were bombarding them with machine guns and anti-aircraft shells so hard that the building started to collapse. The leader of the German troops died when he saved the French Prime Minister by pushing him out of harm's way. They held the castle all day long until more American reinforcements arrived. In one of the most shocking victories of World War II, they took over 100 Nazi soldiers prisoner. We are at a moment in history when power is shifting. Whistleblowers are defecting and coming forward. People are switching sides because they want to stand for freedom. Trump and his supporters are trying to defend that castle until reinforcements arrive. It does not matter what country you're watching this from. People are deciding who is on the right side of history. When you hear what Judge Boasberg did, it is wrong. Truth matters. Justice matters. The United States was created so that people could be free. And it is time again to stand up for the American promise of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That is the promise for anyone who is willing to stand up for what is right. It is time to hold Judge Boasberg accountable for all the laws he has broken. It is time to impeach Judge Boasberg. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think that Judge Boasberg broke the law? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you like this video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future videos. If you find my videos helpful, consider signing up for a membership on my website, wolvesandfinance.com. For $6 a month, your support helps me to keep making these videos. Thank you to everyone who has signed up. I'm Zach from Wolves and Finance. Thank you for watching.